Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, can you believe we're into August, Phil? Summer holidays, schools have broken up, and we've got a bit of a heat wave going on.
We have, and this week we've had a base rate decrease as well by 0.25% from 5.25 down to 5%, which I suggest will probably be very much welcomed. I know the mortgage lenders were already predicting and adjusting accordingly in terms of their rates. But no, I think that'll be a welcome, positive news for both the automotive sector, for both the businesses, retailers, and the consumers, because it's both, cost of ownership, cost of living, etc., doesn't it? So positive news, I think, on that one.
And it's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I think it's, I can't remember how long it is now, but yeah, it's been a long time since the last base rate. And I think this was 50-50 at one point, whether it was going to happen in August or delayed again till September. But they made the decision. I think it's the right decision. It's just whether we get another one before the end of the year, we get another two before the end of the year. Now, I probably predict we'll probably get one more now before the end of the year. But no, positive news all around. I mean, anything like that is positive for both business and consumer in the market.
Yeah, and you've been out in the real world this past week, haven't you? Because you were chairing the VRA conference. How did that go?
Yeah, very well, extremely well. The subject matter was on battery health, battery certification. So we had the pleasure of having a panel discussion with representatives from Avalue, Clearwatt and Altilium, that are all certification providers of the battery health. And we're joined by Roland, who is part of Carsa over in Europe, who have been in a sort of a period of approving certification providers for their members in Europe. So no, fantastic discussion, fantastic debate on that one. But it also, we did launch a new subcommittee for the Vehicle Remarketing Association, which is the Wellbeing, Diversity and Inclusion Initiative Subcommittee, which is being headed by and chaired by Olivia Mills from Zenith. And also part of that is friend of the podcast, Rachel Cliff from Ben, and our very own Stephen Whitten as well from Menable. So that's a fantastic move. And AM did a fantastic write-up because Amy was there reporting on the members' meeting and did a fantastic write-up of the discussion, the debate, because Abdul Chowdhury joined us from ULEZ as well, from the government, to talk about what their plans are around the zero emission mandate and the battery certification from a government perspective.
Yeah, it sounds though that was a really good day. And as you say, it's great to see Rachel Cliff from Ben and Steve Whitten from Menable working together on this initiative. And hopefully we can provide some updates as and when on that. So, good initiative there.
Yeah, great. And also this week we'll be sharing, after this morning's headlines, a snippet from the CAP HPI interview with Jeremy Yeh, where he covered the July trade values and what that means going into the month of August. But that was shared on Monday morning of this week. Sorry, the week is flying away. So Monday morning of this week in your podcast feed for the full interview. So do make sure you have a listen to that one.
And talking of Stephen Whitten, he is joining us after the midway break for his latest Menable moment. So do stay tuned for that.
Yeah, and also we have something to look out for next week. And this is fairly unique to the podcast.
Curtis, it's an exclusive.
And unique in many ways. And a name that will be well known across the sector, with Perry Moon, MP, who joined us, didn't he, for a fantastic interview that will be published next week.
We had a great conversation with Perrin. Perrin will be familiar to listeners from his days at Mannheim and Auto Trader, and more recently at Believe and Zap Maps as well. And fascinating backstory in the industry, but he's now the MP for Redruth, Hale and Camborne in Cornwall. So we had a great conversation with him about the sort of onboarding process and what he's bringing to Parliament, bearing in mind his background in automotive.
Exactly. A very open and very honest chat with Perrin there. So do keep an eye on your podcast feed next week when we'll share that with you in due course.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Headlines this week come from AM, Car Dealer, Motor Trader and Mail Online. And following last week, this is a bit of a running theme we've got going here, Phil, because last week we started the show with 3 or 4 stories about the used car supermarket sector. And this week we're starting with a further 2 stories about the used car supermarket sector. Starting with Trade Centre UK closes Birmingham South site. Used car dealer group Carsa expands into former Brava Auto sites. Stellantis boss Carlos Tavares orders strategic review of its UK operations due to ZEV mandate risk. Virtue builds representation in the Southwest. And we'll close this week's show with a look at Uber, who are setting to deploy apparently thousands of driverless BYD cars onto Britain's roads.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
You want to talk us through the sort of headlines? We normally start off talking about the high level 3-year 60 mark that was down minus 0.4%, which I think is a circa about £70. And talk us through, the detail behind some of that and how it compares with both recent months and previous years at the same point.
Yeah, so as you just alluded to, then it's a 0.4% down, which is marginal. It's actually a really quite strong month again. That's on top of a strong month last month, which was a 0.1% drop, and that was 1% stronger than normal seasonality or average seasonality if you take out the COVID years. And this year and this month again has been very, very similar. The start of the month actually started probably a little bit stronger than it ended. We were at 0.1 for probably the first couple of weeks, if not a little bit more. Then it was only in the last sort of 10 days or so it started just to come back edge, but ever so slightly, just a little bit more than expected. But with the averages 1.1% down of July into August book, then I think that's a strong result. It's a strong result overall. I mean, there's lots of variation with underneath that, and that's the highlight of detail that we go to, and there's an awful lot of work we do. But overall, it still looks like a very, very stable market and steady as it goes.
And that takes us to a year to date, I think, of minus 4.5%, which is slightly stronger than the same period last year. I think it was down minus 5.4%. So, and you alluded to it there that, we always talk about the monthly figure, but as you said there, you look at it daily, because within your cap live figures. So you're saying that, it just started, it was fairly firm and then it just started to just ease off. Was that driven by anything in particular, or it just got that little bit weaker as we got through the month?
I think things just sort of eased a little bit, and that's not across every sector, to be fair. We just saw, I think if there's, any large duplications and the market's not full of cars at the minute, but we just saw sort of a little bit of a tailing off. And I guess, there are holidays which are staggered across the country, and Scotland's been off for a good 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks now, maybe a month. So the way the impact it sort of impacts the UK in different ways as the school holidays sort of kick in, and there'll be plenty of people, with the holidays now in full flow, then it was sort of expected in some ways. But like I said, even an extra 0.3 drop in the last sort of, week, sort of 10 days or more isn't untoward. It really isn't. It's just a very slight cooling of where it was before. And I think last month it's down 0.1. I think it didn't move from the middle of May, and I think it only moved down another 0.1 from the middle of May. So, there's been a continued quite a long period of weeks and weeks of strength, and it just sort of eased back now, which again, it's not untoward and probably is a little bit expected.
And Jeremy, looking at some of the detail within the editorial, can you take us through some of the pricing trends you tracked across the various age bands this month?
Yeah. 1 year 10K, that went down 0.6, again, which is, marginal, which is about £190 overall. So again, very, very marginal and under what would be a normal monthly average. A 5 year 80K, that went down the same of 0.6. It's when you get to the older vehicles, I think, where there's obviously a huge mix of maybe condition and mechanical challenges and other things to affect provenance, etc. That dropped 1.6% overall. So, but again, that's not off a cliff. I think there is some variation within that data as well. Some of them have recovered slightly. Some of them have dropped even further. I think high mileage cars are probably one of the hardest hit at the minute. But, overall, it's all more or less in line with each other and within expectation.
Well, some great insight there from Jeremy Yeh from CAP HPI. And it is worth checking out the full interview because Jeremy does go into more detail behind what drove the drop. And, as he alluded to there, some of the segments and indeed fuel. So lots to cover and some of his thoughts on how August may pan out.
Yeah, that's it really. I think, we're in this period now, and you sort of, alluded right at the start there, the weather and everything else and holidays and things taking place. So it was key to sort of tease out of Jeremy what his thoughts were over the sort of coming weeks and months for the sector. So as I said before, if you haven't listened to the full interview with Jeremy Yeh from CAP HPI, it was in your podcast feed on first thing Monday morning. So do have a listen to the full interview there with Jeremy. So heading over to the headlines now, and heading over to the first stories at the start there, the car dealer. So Trade Centre UK closes Birmingham South used car supermarket in a bid to grow sales, saying that it confirms the closure of its used car supermarket in Birmingham South, that consumers now being redirected to nearby mega stores in Coventry and Wednesbury. And that the CEO says that the move has been made in order to grow sales in the Midlands market area. And I suppose really this is you said it's the heart, Curtis, when you went through the headlines, a running theme now. Yeah. That supermarkets are in the headlines a lot lately, aren't they? And through expansion and closure and limited supply challenges.
Yeah, and I think the key to this particular story is the description of Birmingham South as being a small site, whereas the neighbouring sites in Wednesbury and Coventry are mega store facilities. So within the story, Andy Coldthirst, the CEO of Trade Centre UK, says that he can confirm that as part of our plan to grow sales in the Midlands market area, we have transferred our Birmingham South business to our mega stores at Wednesbury and Coventry. The small format Birmingham South store has now closed. And within the story, it does say that staff have been redistributed amongst the sites, and customers are being encouraged to use those neighbouring sites. So for me, it looks though it was something to do with probably the location and the size of that particular site, plus having two neighbouring sites fairly close by.
Yeah, I think at the minute, the way, supply, everything else played into some of this, and efficiency and costs and overheads that are all part of this as well. It does make sense, particularly if you've got, like you say, Curtis, those neighbouring larger operations that can really absorb that volume into those sites. So that it does make a lot of sense. It'll make them a lot more efficient, a lot more profitable in terms of that value. And if you're not having challenges geographically, that you're across that Midland territory, then it makes a lot of sense to do it. Why wouldn't you be doing this in the current climate?
Yeah, and it's worth just adding that Trade Centre remains a major player because obviously it came from Wales. It was formed in Wales. It's got 2 big sites in Wales, and it's still got 4 sites across the Midlands as part of Trade Centre UK. So within the piece again, Andy Corthurst makes clear that there aren't plans to do anything else. It's business as usual from here on in. So we'll see how that pans out for them.
Yeah, and sticking with car supermarkets, we're heading over to AM Online, and used car dealer group Carsa expands into former Bravo Auto sites. So, I mean, we covered it at the time when these sites were set up, the expansion that was these car supermarkets, but obviously this is now that it now falls under the umbrella of Carsa, the used car dealer group founded by former Imperial car supermarkets executives, and it's basically doubled its portfolio very, very quickly overnight with this one.
Yeah, this really is a good move, and they've really consolidated their business there. So it's taken on showrooms in Howes Owen, Bolton, Cannock, and Shrewsbury that, as you say, were previously occupied by Bravo Auto, which was the car supermarket arm of Inchcape. And the expansion means that Carsa now has a presence pretty much across the north of England, from Leicestershire and Yorkshire to Lancashire and County Durham, plus an outlet in Southampton down on the south coast.
Yeah, no, and there is there is comment in the story saying that former Imperial Cars commercial director John Churcher and sales director Mike Hawkins and sales support manager Kelly Beetle, who founded the business back in 2020. They're saying that increasingly consumers are looking for reliable, eco-friendly used cars as an alternative to expensive new electric vehicles. Got the electric ones in there, Curtis.
Yeah.
And that that they showed that in 2022, 2023 revenues had reached 30 million and a 7,699 operating loss. So I think there's a bit of a job here now to probably get scale across that business through this expansion and become a little bit more efficient in what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and within the story, it does actually hint at what that might look like, because they are looking at further opportunities in the West Country and East Anglia. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, what opportunities will arise for them. But they're certainly in growth mode. And we thought as part of this story, it'd be worth just referring back to Inchcape, because there was an update this week on Group 1, who bought Inchcape, that they actually completed that acquisition over the course of the week. So that effectively means that Inchcape disappears as a retailing name in the UK, because those sites will be rebranded, and Inchcape as a business reverts back to distribution, international distribution, representing OEMs across Europe and further afield.
Yeah, and I think in the announcement that from Group 1 recently as well, that they are looking at further expansion as well. They've got their eye on more expansion across the UK. So we'll obviously keep a close eye on what's next from Group 1 now that, as you say, the deal is now completed, which has obviously doubled its footprint there in the UK, and what they're going to do next, because they have cited that they are looking at further growth and expansion across the UK market.
After the break, we have the latest Menable moment with our mental wealth guru, Stephen Whitten. This week, he's looking at R&R and getting CFOs to buy into well-being.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand, wherever you are, and on your podcast feed. Next up is our latest Menable moment, looking at mental wealth and well-being awareness and best practice in the automotive sector. With me, Stephen Whitten.
Yeah, morning everyone. It's Menable Moments time again. Hope you're well. It's that time of year, isn't it, where a lot of people are zooming off on their holidays or taking some time out to get some well-earned R&R, some rest and relaxation. Well, I've done exactly the same. You'll be surprised to hear, because I know, Phil, you marvel at the amount of time that I spend away. I think I have more holidays than you, actually, which is, I don't know, not that we're keeping score. But anyway, I've turned it into a bit of a goal. And my goal is that I need to be travelling and doing something like this for a bit of R&R at least once a month. I don't think that's unreasonable. Long weekend here and there, or whatever it might be. Anyway, my R&R in this case is reflection and research. I'll come on to research in a minute, but reflection, firstly, is actually about stopping to think about what we've achieved. Menable turned 4 years old this week, and I can't believe that. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. And so I've been looking back at what we've achieved, and there are some significant impacts that we've had. And this isn't a selling job by any means, but you know, we've raised awareness of the issue of mental wealth across the industry. We've got lots and lots of people talking about it. And we're seeing things like 28% reduction in stress levels. We're seeing a reduction in the 1.3 million notional cost per year to recruit new people because of attrition rates. And we're seeing that reduce because people are now staying with businesses longer and, being more honest about what's going on for them, that is. And on that front, we're also seeing now businesses that are having honest conversations about absence. So we always used to do that thing, didn't we, where if you didn't, if we weren't coping, we weren't feeling great, didn't have enough bandwidth to go into work and do a day's work properly, that we'd make something up. We'd have the flu or a tummy bug or something wrong with us. Bad back used to be the classic. And what we're seeing now is that people are in businesses actually ringing their managers and saying, I'm not in a good place today. I'm having a bit of an issue. I've got a bit of a mental health problem today. I need to take some time out and go, or maybe go and get some assistance or whatever. So, all of that is brilliant, because that's all part of the raising awareness and increasing, the value of well-being across our businesses. So, reflecting on all of that, that's one part. I put a post out the other day, actually, that said that when the CFO in a business, when the person in charge of the finances really kind of buys into the whole need for well-being, that's when it takes off. And the reason I mentioned that was because I had a conversation with someone recently, head of a well-being area in their business, and was basically saying that they'd recently had some conversations where the CFO had presented that they need to do some cost cutting. That may inevitably lead to some staff reductions. And they, as the person responsible for well-being, were totally discombobulated. They were like, well, how do we deal with that? Because we're still trying to present that we are doing all the right things and looking after our teams, and yet cost cutting is now the issue. So, not saying that that's wrong, because clearly there are business needs for that, and every business needs to take a close look at their finances. It's all about the numbers after all. But it did dawn on me that I thought, yeah, do you know what? We need to make sure that the CFOs, the finance people, those with their fingers on the purse strings, are really properly bought into well-being. And by contrast, as I said, those businesses where we're seeing some fantastic reductions in things like stress levels and absence and attrition, and also seeing some increase in productivity. That's making a direct causal link between the business performance and well-being. Mental wealth is business wealth after all. So that's something for you to have a think about. But the second R for me, as I said, is research. So now that we've reached the 4-year period in Menable, it's time for me to step away for a week or so and reflect on where we're at and think about all those good things, and then think about, well, where do we go from here? And so I've come to Gran Canaria for a bit of research. And there's a couple of things I'm researching, and one is around the potential for what they call a digital nomad life, which is that you're not fixed to one place. So that's one thing. And then the second thing I'm researching, I can't tell you about because it's a massive secret. Why did I even mention it? I'm not sure really. But anyway, it's something that is an important passion project for me. Some of you will know that I've been talking about it for a while, and is something that is going to be launched later in the year. So keep an ear out for that. And but yeah, whatever R&R stands for you, whether you're off getting some much earned rest and recharge those batteries, then I hope you're having a good one and enjoying. I think there's still some fabulous weather going on in the UK, although by the time you hear this, there'll probably be thunderstorms, where it's guaranteed full-time sunshine here, all I'm saying, just saying. Anyway, it's great to have a chat once more, and we will speak soon. Now, if you want any help and assistance with really kind of making those links around well-being to the performance and the finances of the business, give me a shout. You know how to get hold of me, stephen.witten@menable.org, or through the website, menable.org. Okie doke, take it easy. And, one last thing. Just wanted to give a massive shout out to the VRA. I was there last week, and Phil and the board of the VRA, awesome. You've established the W and DEI, the Wellbeing and DEI subcommittee, which I'm a part of, with Rachel Clift and Olivia from Zenith, which is just amazing. That's brilliant. So well done to the VRA for that. But more specifically, well done for putting that item on the agenda right at the beginning of the day, which really emphasised to everyone just how important well-being is. So there you go. I'm going to go off and get a little bit more R&R, and we will catch up again soon. Take it easy.
Well, lots to unpick in that one. Where do we start? I was interested in this digital nomadic life that Stephen was talking about. So look forward to hearing a bit more about what that actually entails.
Yeah. I think that's just the excuse for doing things whilst he's on holiday, I think.
Yes.
Or whilst he's sat in the sun. Yeah, saying that you can do everything in the digital world, I suppose, but no, you do need to these things in person sometimes, as you and I know, unfortunately.
Yes.
But as always, if you need to get a hold of Stephen, you can do that through menable.org, or find him on any social media channel, mainly LinkedIn, or email him at stephen.witten, WHITTON @menable.org if you want to speak to him about anything to do with mental health and well-being and inclusion. Please do feel free to reach out to Stephen there. Back to the headlines, and Stellantis never seem to be out of the headlines, do they, Curtis? But AM Online, Tavares orders strategic review of Stellantis UK due to ZEV mandate risk. Now, this is kind of continual, isn't it? And we kind of talked, we've mentioned this before around Maria, who was interviewed, and her view on the UK ZEV mandate and the impact on Stellantis as a brand here in the UK. But Carlos Tavares has also highlighted it and demanded a re-explanation of the vehicle manufacturers' business prospects in the UK in light of the impact of the ZEV mandate. I mean, it couldn't get more direct in saying that the government's policy is damaging to Stellantis. So really very clear on their agenda.
Yeah, there's some pretty hard-hitting comments in here from Carlos Tavares, because he goes on to say that it's talking to the UK government, so it's talking to the new government, and it says that it's in intensive and productive dialogue. But he also added that so far we don't have the answers we need. But the next comment goes on to say, we will see what comes next, but I have decided to trigger a strategic review of our business model in the UK because we cannot be making EVs in the UK and be victims of the ZEV mandate. This is a contradiction that the company cannot accept. Now, Carlos Tavares has made it known repeatedly that he's not a fan of the ZEV mandate. And really what he's saying now is that it's pretty much down to having two production plants in the UK, obviously Ellesmere Port and Luton, both producing battery electric vehicles. And what he's looking for is certainty, and he's been asking for this for a long time. But this is against a backdrop of Stellantis having underperforming in some areas, having challenges certainly across many areas, as it becomes this behemoth of a company with so many brands sitting under the umbrella. But his focus certainly seems to be the UK at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's probably, I mean, part of this has probably been triggered in terms of their latest financial announcement as well. So, there's comment in the piece here, and it refers to Europe as well, saying that Europe as a whole is a very, very challenging market that's under a strong Chinese offensive during the H1 briefing results that they did, and saying that in H1 the results showed a net revenues of 85 billion, but that was down 14% compared to the same period H1 2023, and primarily due to the decline in sales volumes and mix, whilst the net profit of 5.6 billion was down, listen to this one, 48% compared to H1 2023.
Yeah.
And obviously due to low volume, mix, plus the headwinds from foreign exchange and restructuring costs as well. So there's a lot taking place in that broader Stellantis brand at the minute, and it is having severe impact on their financial performance, albeit very good performance in general. But when you start looking at that year-on-year performance, it is significantly down compared to that same period, 2023 last year.
Yeah, and as an aside, only this week, certainly in the car press, some of the consumer titles were reporting that Stellantis were having second thoughts about Maserati, whether they should exit the brand. Although, as we record this, I think they've put out confirmation that Maserati is still part of the family. So they, this review is far-reaching. Okay, they're doing a strategic review of the UK, but they will be looking at each and every brand as well as part of that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more to come, and I suspect the commentary and directness of some of his commentary will get intensified because the year progresses through the second half of the year if nothing happens to change that ZEV mandate. But on to something a little bit more optimistic and positive, and friend of the podcast in motortrader.com, Virtue acquires Honda Exeter from Hendy Group. Now, this is saying that has continued its expansion in the southwest with the acquisition of the Honda Exeter from Hendy Group this week, and saying that the dealership rebranded as Virtue Honda Exeter brings Virtue's Honda dealerships across the UK to a total of 17. In the southwest, Virtue Honda Exeter joins Virtue Honda Plymouth and Truro. So again, when we've had Robert on, Honda is a clear brand that he likes. He sees them as a significant partner, doesn't he, to the Virtue business. So you can see again a continuation of this realignment of the brands with their dealer representation across the UK.
Yeah, and I would hazard a guess, and Robert will no doubt be shouting at his the device, whichever device he's listening to the podcast on. But I'd hazard a guess that at 17, that would make Virtue pretty much Honda's biggest partner in the UK. And yeah, we've spoken to Robert on the podcast before about Honda. They are of strategic importance to the group, and we can see how that portfolio is growing and growing. And this is a significant acquisition, not just because of increasing representation with Honda, but it's also the Southwest, which has been a target of Virtue since it acquired Helston Garages at the end of 2020. And it now operates over 30 outlets across the Southwest. And I do remember Robert saying that he particularly likes the Southwest because it means that you don't have adjoining territories alongside of it. You just have the sea.
Yes, yeah, and he quite enjoys going down there, I suspect,
Yes.
as well when he can get the chance. So yeah, I mean, I know you'll be listening, Robert. I think we're right in terms of that does make you the largest Honda dealership in the group in the UK. But please correct us if we are right or wrong, and look forward to catching up soon. Now, heading over to the final story of today, and this is heading over to Mail Online. And as always, you can always count on the long descriptive headline in Mail Online. But Uber could deploy thousands of driverless Chinese vehicles onto Britain's roads as part of the strategic partnership with car manufacturer BYD. This is the transport provider has announced a strategic partnership with Chinese manufacturer BYD, aimed to bring 100,000 new electric vehicles across the globe. And I mean, we're hearing a lot from Uber at the minute. There's radio adverts going out to the black cab sector to join Uber, and the flexibility and options that Uber will offer them. And now this, becoming a strategic partner for what is one of the largest Chinese manufacturers coming into the UK and significantly across Europe and other significant markets as well. So this is a serious move by both Uber and BYD.
Yeah, it is. And both companies have said that they will work together to deploy BYD's self-driving vehicles onto the Uber platform, claiming that the ride-hailing app is well positioned now to bring autonomous vehicle tech to a global audience at scale. It still sounds futuristic to me, but driverless cars are a thing. We talked only last year about a pilot that was happening in Milton Keynes, so pretty close to home. But this is a multi-year partnership, hence the big numbers, 100,000 vehicles, and it is truly global. But I guess what's of interest to us is that Uber has already made a pledge that all of its vehicles in London will be electric by the end of next year, while it was vowed to achieve net zero emissions across the whole of the UK by 2030. So it's on a pretty tight deadline. So it remains to be seen how driverless cars fit into this. Is it solely driverless, or will it be BYDs being operated by Uber drivers? But good contract for BYD. I mean, you were saying about BYD. I mean, they're scoring so well in terms of marketing, presence, awareness, and certainly following their sponsorship of the Euros, they will be on the radar of a lot more potential car buyers than they were before. So this will further raise that awareness. Certainly if we're seeing Ubers zipping around London driverless with BYD badges.
Yeah, but I mean, interestingly, within the story, they do cite Tesla as well in terms of Uber. Back in January, said that they were working with Tesla to promote the use of EVs by its drivers in the US. And obviously, they're talking about that in the US and some of the Canadian cities as well. So, again, Uber really getting behind that driverless as well as EV marketplace in the global market. So, yeah, some big moves here by Uber, and obviously particularly with BYD with that number. But as you say there, Curtis, it's a very small window for that scale, but they are going quick. We can't deny them that. So that's it for this week. So a long week of headlines there with the, as I said right at the start there, do try and catch up with the Jeremy A interview from Cap HPI there. Gives you a lot more detail, a little bit sort of context behind the numbers of what's happening in the marketplace and some of that detail and their view on the market. So do tune into that one if you do get the chance this week.
But you know what, Phil? That's all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. We're back during the week with that exclusive interview with Perrin Moon MP. So do look out for that. You won't want to miss it. So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.